fiend for the music. Seen a hooker with a crack pipe, praying for forgiveness, screaming, this gon' be the last night. Ooh, it's a lot to take in. Jesus ain't white, he ain't even light skinned.
Did you know that in 1921, the government dropped bombs on American citizens from airplanes? But this wasn't a foreign attack. This was white America destroying black wealth. Tulsa's Greenwood district was called Black Wall Street. Doctors, lawyers, and business owners lived in mansions. Black-owned banks held millions of dollars. Children went to top schools. It was the richest black community in America. Then came May 31st. A white mob surrounded the area. But when black residents fought back, the government stepped in, not to protect them, to destroy them. Planes flew overhead, dropping bombs and fire on homes and businesses. Machine guns fired from the sky. In just 2 days, 35 city blocks were turned to ash. 300 people died. 10,000 were left homeless. The government called it a riot, but declassified documents tell a different story. This was a planned attack to stop black economic power from growing. Black Wall Street was never rebuilt. The land was seized. The wealth was gone forever. And for decades, this massacre was erased from history books.
Let's talk about something y'all don't like to talk about, but needs to be talked about. Racism. Racism.
Ramona Africa is the only adult survivor of the 1985 MOVE bombing. And instead of being treated as a victim of state terror, she was thrown into a prison cell. When the city of Philadelphia dropped a bomb on her home, killing 11 of her comrades, including 5 children, and burning down an entire black neighborhood, Ramona survived by climbing through the flames. She emerged battered, burned, and grieving, but unbroken. Her reward? The state charged her with riot and conspiracy, sentencing her to 7 years. Meanwhile, the police commissioner, the mayor, and every official involved in authorizing a bombing in a residential neighborhood walked free. That tells you everything you need to know about who this system protects and who it destroys. Ramona spent her life as a tireless freedom fighter. She traveled the world demanding justice, exposing the lies of the American police state, and reminding us that the MOVE bombing wasn't an accident. It was policy. It was what happens when black people organize, resist capitalism, and dare to live outside the boxes built for them. She said, they tried to kill us, and when they failed, they threw me in prison. But we're still here, and we're still fighting. Ramona Africa is more than a survivor. She's a symbol of resistance. And she never stopped demanding what this system fears most: accountability and...
My name is Janine Africa, and I am one of the MOVE 9 that the strategy of John Africa, my MOVE family, and all the people like you brought home. And to the question about what do we do to keep that revolution dream going, as the sister was saying, you heard about Palestine and it's horrific what's going on. But what people got to understand, that is happening right here. Anybody that stands up against this system, they are getting the same treatment. Nobody ever thought they would see a bomb dropped in a suburban area, burning down 63 houses, because John Africa MOVE dared to say the truth. I spent 41 years in jail because I dared to speak the truth. And we told people, this isn't a MOVE issue, it's an issue of justice. And that when you let be done to MOVE, it's gonna come to you. When they dropped that bomb, and these people didn't tear this city up, that, if you notice, is when the escalation came of the George Floyds. You know, and all of the people behind them, where they are actually murdering people in the street on TV in front of your face and telling you, so what? So you gotta realize and don't feel comfortable, because we're not facing what the Palestinians are facing crystallized right now. But don't get comfortable, because we had officers that saw the August 8th film where they attacked us, and they came and told us, I thought I was watching a film from over in Afghanistan or somewhere, because that's how violent it was. So it's a smaller scale with us, but it's the same thing. And if you get complacent and think, well, I'm not over in Palestine, I'm all right. Don't believe it. I sat there and I watched them burn my family to death on TV. And nobody ever thought they would see that. So it's not to scare you, but it's for you to take it serious. Whatever you could do, we got to come together and do, because like they said too, Mumia is the tell-all. If y'all let him die in that prison, there will be no stopping them. He's going to be the example of all the people that dared to be a revolution, to be a revolutionary. And we got to send the word back to them that we ain't taking it no more. So it's, you might not be able to be on the front line. I don't condemn nobody. I took the stand I took. I know everybody can't do what I did and move. But you can write letters, you can make phone calls, you can show videos of what's going on. There is so much that you could do that will come together as one force, you know, because right now you got 5 fingers spread out. But John have to explain, when you bring them fingers together, the punch is a knockout. So that's what we got to keep in mind. The weapon that we have is unity. They got the guns, they got the armies, they got all of that, but that means nothing with the unity. That is the strongest bomb we got.
A lot of people have been calling me the N-word or a monkey, even black boy. One girl said to me, I would hit you, but that's called animal abuse. That to me, we should not get treated like this. We should get treated equally. This is not fair to us black people.
You know what I'm saying? We're not following y'all rules.
I mean, just like calling death con on Jews and that's like, do you take back any of that sort of more extreme stuff?
You know what? For all the kids that love me, all the Jewish kids that love me, I'm sorry if y'all had to hear a grown-up conversation with us screaming at each other. But we got to a point where something needed to happen. Something needed to be said. Somebody needed to say something. Now, if you're in an argument with somebody, you're not going to say everything the right way. But it got to a point where y'all ain't going to just keep running, start calling me bizarre and impressed for all these years. I got to the point, how many more times y'all going to call me crazy? How many more times are you going to give me fake medication that makes me fat off of a misdiagnosis when I really have slight signs of autism from the car accident? But then y'all gave me, you say, whatever, just give them that bipolar medication. Y'all try to kill the superhero.
Are you anti-Semitic?
Anti-Semitic.
You've many of the things that I've read about you, and you've made a mention a couple of times about the Jews and everything, and I'm wondering if you are personally anti-Semitic.
No. How can I be anti-Semitic when the Arabs are half the Muslim world is Semitic? If I was anti-Semitic, I'd be anti-Arab and anti-everything else. No, I think that in this country, there's one mistake that the Jews make. They put themselves in a position where whenever anybody gives an objective analysis of the role that they play, they defend themselves by accusing you of being anti-Semitic. And a Negro is not anti-Semitic when he says that the man who's exploiting him in his community is white, because it is a white man who owns all the stores. Now, is it an accident that these whites who own these stores are Jewish? If it's an accident, then the fact that he says the Jew on the corner is exploiting me isn't an anti-Semitic statement. It's just more descriptive of the man who's exploiting him.
You ain't gonna believe this. Did you know that white people created Pan-Africanism? And not only that, it was created to erase black Americans' lineage, culture, and identity. I'm about to show you why Pan-Africanism is a scam and how the leaders who push it are inadvertently or advertently pushing white supremacy. But first, we gotta start off with a quote from Malcolm X.
Only a fool will let his enemies teach his children.
Keep this quote in mind because that's the exact dilemma that we under. Now in school, there are objective things that are beneficial for us to learn, like math, and then there are subjective things like history, which can be weaponized, especially when you have to depend on your oppressor to teach you about your history. Because a major rule of colonization is to rewrite history to justify domination, use school, religion, and media to reshape the identity, and replace the native languages with colonizer languages. And also the goal of colonization is to control how people think about themselves and their past. See, they separate us from our parents at a very young age. We are sent to strangers, and these strangers have control over what goes inside of our minds. And we do this from the ages of 5 all the way to 18, and for a lot of people, all the way well into their 20s if they go to college. This is called indoctrination. Indoctrination is a process of teaching a person or a group to accept a set of beliefs, doctrines, and ideologies uncritically, often preventing them from questioning or considering alternative viewpoints. And indoctrination is also imposing specific ideologies in an educational setting, such as forcing one-sided views of history. This is why you'll see Pan-Africans and Afrocentric people try to attack people who have alternative views of history, because they are in place to ensure we never wake up to our true identity, and they pretend that they are fighting white supremacy when in reality they are actually upholding it and selling us out for profit. I call them sellouts and revolutionary clothing. These people are indoctrinated, and they want to make sure you stay indoctrinated as well, which is a form of brainwashing. And this was the same thing for our great scholars in history like W.E.B. Du Bois, and even current day people like Dr. Umar Johnson. W.E.B. Du Bois was a prominent pusher of Pan-Africanism. He was the first black American to get a Ph.D. in Harvard University. And guess what the subject was that he got his Ph.D. in? You guessed it, history.
Full video. The only people that have come to America involuntarily. We didn't come here with our language intact. We didn't come here with our beliefs, our religious or spiritual beliefs intact. Those all things were stripped from us.
Our names,
and we, in all of our culture, everything, our resources. We didn't come here with the things that other people. So when we hear folk talk about, hey, slavery is over. Why y'all still complaining about that? Or, our people came here and they worked their asses off. And that's true. Immigrants came from from Europe and Asia, all over the world. And yes, they did, lace up their bootstraps, and they did what they had to do. But they came with all things intact. They came voluntarily. They didn't come on. So, and those who did come came with resources that were set up by people who were in servitude.
Absolutely.
That's just facts. Right. So we already have the disadvantage, and we don't have that legacy, as we talk about legacy, as other people, because our legacy was the slavery that we had to, endure and pass on. And so all of that stuff matters. And so when we talk about Bronzeville and places like, Tulsa, Oklahoma, and all these other great places like Harlem, we then found our own thing. It's important. And now you look around, how many black businesses that are owned by us, operated by us, right? And how many hospitals that are owned by black folks and operated by us? How many banks? How much infrastructure? Media is a big thing, right? Media, how many of us own media companies?
And we make it go.
Racism. In 1896, he published a book called Race, Tendencies, and Traits of the American Negro, in which he lays out all the numbers, and then he concludes that if we simply avoided allowing black people to have any access to health care, that within 2 or 3 generations, the whole race would die out, and that would solve the race problem in America. When Teddy Roosevelt, 1912, proposed a national health care system, people said no because black people will get it. When Franklin Roosevelt proposed a national health care system, it was the same thing. We don't want black people to get it. When Truman tried it in 1947, same thing. Don't want black people to get it. We have to figure out a way to keep black people from using Medicare. And the way that they came up with was to have a 20% hole, a gap in Medicare, so that you had to pay 20% of your doctor's bill and your hospital bill, and that would discourage poor black people from showing up at the hospitals. Nearly 100% of the reason why the United States is the only country in the world that doesn't define healthcare as a right is because of racism.
Now when you look it up, you don't see my dad protecting his neighborhood or snatching a mic out of somebody's hand while they're lying. You see this character that's made for black people to idolize, that was designed by a white person and put out by a white company. So it's controlling the narrative to say, we're going to show you Harriet Tubman, we're not going to show you Nat Turner. And they do it every chance they get. Maleficent, they called her race of people the Moors. And the Moors are, and I just saw it again, I was just like, yo, if you erase our history. Like most black people, we don't know where we come. We think we came from slaves. We don't know our bloodline. And we're given Black History Month and we take that like it's some gift to us. No, it's a programming to us.
Black Americans survived the worst chapters in this country and still didn't become a people of hate. There's something people forget about Black Americans. Something bigger than pain, bigger than history, bigger than the scars this country carved into their ancestors. And it's this: hate has never been their culture. From the very beginning, Black people in America were forced into a nightmare. Chains, auction blocks, families torn apart, laws written to erase them, violence used to control them. And yet, through all of that, they did not become a people of hate. Their ancestors survived the unthinkable, but they didn't pass down bitterness. They passed down music, faith, community, resilience, joy, and a love so powerful it kept generations alive. They taught them how to rise, not how to hate. And yes, let's tell the truth. White Americans today still benefit from systems built long ago. From wealth passed down through land Black families were denied. From neighborhoods Black people were locked out of. From schools funded by opportunities they were never allowed to have. Privilege didn't disappear, it just changed shape. But even with all of that, hate is still not their nature. Because hate is heavy. Hate is poison. Hate is a chain that locks you down, not them. And Black Americans have carried enough chains for 1,000 lifetimes. They don't need to wake up angry at white people. They don't need to carry rage in their chest like it's part of their identity. Because it's not. It never was. Their fight has always been against systems, not people. Against injustice, not skin color. Against policies, not neighbors. And the truth is, when we hold our heads high, when we refuse to let hate define us, when we stay rooted in strength, dignity, and clarity, we become unstoppable. Black Americans are the descendants of survivors, of visionaries, of people who endured the darkest chapters of this nation and still found ways to love, build, create, and hope. So no, hate is not who they are. Hate is not their legacy. Hate is not their culture. They rise because their ancestors rose. They fight systems, not people. And they walk forward without hate. Because their power has always been bigger than that. Stand tall. Stay focused. Stay powerful.
For those of you that don't know who the Moors are, every Black person should know who the Moors are. The Moors were a group of Black people from Africa that ruled in Europe for some 700 years. They were the kings and the queens. So Europe, a certain part of it, Portugal and Spain, was ruled by Black people. We were the kings, we were the queens, the dukes and the earls and all the other kind of stuff. They buried that in history so that you don't know that. I'm not making this up. Go check it for yourself. They were called the Moors. They brought culture. They brought history. They brought math. They brought science. They brought a multitude of things to Europe that they will never get credit for in the public school. So, look it up. M-O-O-R-S, Moors.
Just let me know, everything on the planet was all about the Moors. There was nobody else before the Moors. So everybody was dark. Until they started getting recessive light. Just facts, all right? The mitochondrial DNA goes back to that original woman. Okay? Let's cut the nonsense. There has been more than one beginning on Earth. So people say the beginning. What beginning are you talking about? Are you talking about the beginning of the last 6,000 years for the modern man out here? Or you talking about another beginning, go back another 26,000 years? Or you talking about another age before that goes another 26,000 years? Or you talking about another age that goes... See, we got 12 ages like that of 26,000 years. The piece coming down to 312,000 years, but we at the end date now. Took over the Moors' position, acting like they bloodline. Yeah, they're an evil bloodline. And they the ones give y'all the information to make y'all hate the Moors. Moors was about unity for the whole planet. The whole planet. It was always about peace and love. That's what we brought around the world. That's what we taught. Education and talked about a babe and stuff like that. But Satan and these people that get tricked, who like other stuff, they nobody talks about the Moors. When they don't talk about something that's hidden, you know, that's when you know it's shit real. Oh, they try to hide it. You can't even deny it no more. Everything you do is the more. Merchant, banks, commerce, You admire something, that's a murder. You admire something, that's a murder. Shoot.
I think what we really have to understand is that one of the reasons, and this is something for white working class folks to also we need to understand very desperately as white folks, is the reason that working class folks are under the gun in this country of all colors. The reason that working class folks are seeing their economic situation slide in the last 15 to 20, and the reason that we can't get relief for working people of any race, creed, or color is in large part because we have racialized the notion of poverty and need. What we've done is we've said the ones who are in need are black and brown, so we don't have to deal with that. So the reason you got folks that want to get rid of unemployment insurance because they think it makes you lazy is because the unemployed have been typified as black and brown. Now, the irony is a lot of unemployed white folks then can't get benefits either. Or the reason that folks didn't like healthcare reform, you saw it out here on the mall during the rallies back in 09, where folks are like, don't mess with my health care. And there was some white dude like had an oxygen tank hooked up to him. And he's like, I don't want government run health care. Well, dude, do you have any health care at all? Because you're about to die. Like, you know, somebody put a mic in his face. They were like, you have insurance? No. Well, do you need some? Yeah, but I don't want the government. Well, you better if Martians offer you health insurance, you better take it. But what he had done and what white America has done is we have racialized need and want to such an extent that you can get hundreds of thousands of white folks to vote against their interests, to go out and have a rally against healthcare reform because they are convinced that the black man is going to give it all to black people or to brown folks or to quote unquote illegal immigrants is the term we should only put in quotes if say it at all, undocumented peoples. That to me, the reason we have a class problem is because we have a race problem. And if we don't deal with our race problem, working class and poor folks of all colors will continue to get crapped on in this country.
When you look at systemic racism, you're looking at trends that have affected the wealth gap between the races historically in the United States. This is not about a person being a racist or your grandma being a racist. It has to do with what the economy looked like for white persons and black persons historically in this country. Back during the time of the Civil War, the white folks had 56 times more wealth on average than a black person. So it was 56 to 1. Just 10 years later, in 1870, after Reconstruction, that gap went from 56 to 1 to 23 to 1. Pretty dramatic improvement in 10 years. The reason for that market improvement is that while black people were now allowed to purchase land and assets, so black wealth was going up, simultaneously, white wealth was coming down because what was a huge part of their wealth? Slaves. Human beings that they were no longer allowed to own. By 1900, the gap had closed all the way to 11 to 1. The average white person had 11 times more wealth than the average black person. And then it stalled out. And the reason it stalled out is because black people were still being discriminated against. They didn't have the same access to credit, if any access to credit. Legislative attempts at narrowing the gap were shot down, trying to finish narrowing the gap were shot down, like the 40 acres and a mule thing that never got passed. They faced widespread discrimination in education. The schools were still segregated and they weren't getting the best funding and they weren't getting the best teachers.
Oh, why is the wealth gap of black people, why is it so far? How come black people don't own anything? Well, there's a book that a white man wrote called The Color of Law on why they purposely redlined black people from owning houses. They purposely, it was in the law to not sell to African Americans. You see how they act now, how they depreciate when they're selling to black families. Where does this come from? Oh, it comes from here. Building highways in the middle of black neighborhoods so that black people couldn't build houses. This is all facts. Or they put black neighborhoods on toxic waste dumps. And then black people get cancer. This is happening. I need to know about this kind of shit. So if I go and buy a house, I go, oh, I know it. Don't be up to, yeah. But history is important. But the problem is our history is just whether it's African colonialism is so atrocious that they don't want to hear that shit. Well, you shouldn't have acted like that. But how about this? Why don't you let it help you and don't be like that? So if you go to a doctor's office, what's the first thing they pull out when you come to the doctor's office? You sitting down, what do they do? What do they bring out? Your medical history. What do they make you fill out? Your medical history. They make you fill out, does your family have this? They write their pages of that shit because that's how they assess your health now. It's no different than anything else. When you guys were playing ball, what do they talk about? You know, the announcers always talk about your past. Well, as you can see, last week he had a pulled hamstring, but now he's doing much better. They're talking about the past all the time. Last week he was 2 for 3. Now he has 5 RBI. It's always the past. That's how you assess what's going on now. all you guys talk about sports, you're talking about past shit. You go, he was there, he was recruited there, then he got traded. But when it comes to us, we're the only people they go, just move on. No, we're moving on. We're actually moving on. Motherfucker owning businesses, even though you barely give anybody loans, people are moving. Black people are moving on. You're the ones in the old adage of we can't do shit. You're the ones that haven't moved on because you still think we're not human. I'm not saying every white person's like that because it's not true. Because there are, if you look online, there are white people spitting knowledge about African American history. There's a lot of allies, for real. But in the consensus of you're still calling people names online, you're still monkey noises and just dumb shit like that. That's old. You haven't moved on.
Yeah.
You haven't. Because the racial, you got young kids using racial slurs. You haven't moved on because you're teaching your kids this old adage bullshit. You understand? I would love to go on stage one day and do some racial shit and people go, hey man, we don't do that anymore. Oh, great. So my shit is antiquated. This is great. But racism is so, my nephews experienced that shit.
But here's what I've learned. The more I learn, the more I realize how unintentionally racist I have been in so many things. And it is on us now, white people, to educate ourselves. We're never going to fully grasp what it means to live in a world where you are the minority and where the system has been set up for hundreds and hundreds of years to benefit people who look like me and to oppress people who look like my children. But we have got to educate ourselves. I'm going to start listing several books and documentaries that I've been watching to educate myself. And I hope any of you who really want this world to be a better place, we have got to start with the foundation that all men and women are created equal. And we have got to set new rules for how we move in this society if we're going to have that. I need to apologize to the friends, the clients, the people I interacted with for so many years because I thought I wasn't racist, and I'm not as far as the part that comes out of hate. But the part that is born from ignorance, I'm sorry. I should have done better, and I am learning. For those...
Now, we often hear about reverse racism now.
There's no such thing as reverse racism. There's no such thing as reverse racism. You can only be a racist if you have the power to institutionalize what you're doing to people who are different from you. What we're calling reverse racism is natural reaction to being treated unfairly on the basis of somebody else's ignorance. Now, don't ever let anybody say to you or about anyone around you that people don't like that person because of the color of their skin. That isn't the reason white people don't like people of color. They don't like people of color because they don't understand about skin color. And they don't understand that we all are descendants of somebody who looked like your mother. And it's time to change the White House to the President's house. This is ridiculous to call the place where the President of the United States lives the White House. It sends the wrong message. It says, I remember when Richard Nixon said to a group of reporters, I'm trying to save the White House for you white people. That says it all. And at that moment I thought, well, wait a minute. Now, this is something that has to be changed, and it has to be changed. Nothing can stop an idea whose time has come. It's time to change the name of the White House to the President's house or the President's residence, which has a nice ring to it, don't you think? Well, I'm going to get lots of angry responses to that one. And I understand that. But I'm reading a book right now. Everybody that's watching this has to read this book on tyranny. 20 things that we've learned over the last 100 years in this country that have put us in the position we're in now and what we can do about it. Everybody has to read this book. They should read this book first, and then they should read The Myth of Race by Robert Wald Sussman. And once you've read The Myth of Race, you will never, ever again go along with the idea that there are 3 or 4 or 5 different races. It was a lie made up by the people who ran the Spanish Inquisition. And before that, there were different colors, but race had nothing to do. There was only one race, the human race. We made that whole thing up. It's time to get rid of it. We have the power to do that. This country got ready for World War II in about 6 months. And you're telling me that we can't destroy racism? White people created racism. Anything you create, you can destroy. God created human beings, the human race. and they started out black women. White people created racism. Human beings created racism. It's time to get over it.
Today, most urban sectors, especially Milwaukee, remains hyper-segregated. Why is it taking so long, or why doesn't it seem like we can move the button on diversity in neighborhoods?
Because the people who have the power in this country are the people who have the money. And the people who have the money are going to decide where people live. You need to realize that there are more children attending segregated schools in the United States today than there were previous to Brown versus Board of Education. And that's a fact. You need to realize that it is not the intent of white people to let this situation change in favor of anyone but themselves. And right now, white people are really frightened. If you don't understand the destruction of Planned Parenthood offices, and you don't understand the wall that we're going to build on the southern border of the United States, you haven't read the book The Birth Dearth by Ben Wattenberg. Ben Wattenberg was a brilliant Jewish man who was a member of the American Enterprise Institute, and he wrote a book, the first paragraph of which says, "The main problem confronting the United States today is there aren't enough white babies being born in this country." He was an advisor to presidents of the United States. He wrote the book in 1987. He says if we don't change this and change it rapidly, white people will lose their numerical majority in this country, and this will no longer be a white man's land. Now, I'm not misrepresenting this. I'm telling you exactly, almost exactly what he says. He says there are three things we can do to solve this. Number one, we could pay women to have babies, as they have been doing in Western European nations for years. Then he says, and these are his words, not mine, unfortunately, we would have to pay women of all colors to have babies, so we don't want to do that. He says the second thing we could do is increase the number of legal immigrants that are allowed into this country every year. Then once again he says, unfortunately, the vast majority of those wanting to come to this country today are people of color, so we don't want to do that. The third thing he says, and women had better pay attention to this, 60% of the fetuses that are aborted every year are white. If we could keep that 60% alive, that would solve our birth dearth. Does that sound like racism to you? And if it doesn't, I want to know why it doesn't. If it doesn't, you don't understand what racism is. And I think it does.
Right. A lot of people don't understand the trauma associated with race and racism. Can you talk a little bit about the trauma associated with?
The trauma associated with it? Yeah. One of the main traumas is it tells white people that they are superior because of the lack of melanin in their skin. And then they find out suddenly that we've got a black president. That's traumatic. That's where the trauma is. Living a lie, finding out the truth is traumatic. Finding out now, recently, that within 30 years, white people will be in the numerical minority in this country is going to be traumatic. And that's the reason we have to solve this problem, and we have to solve it now. I will ask folks tonight, how many of you black folks want to get even with all white people? And that's what white people are quite certain blacks are going to want to do, is get even with all white people. And nobody will raise their hand, and then I'll say, how many of you want to get even with one or two? Every hand will go up, and you know why, and so do I. White people are scared to death right now, particularly white males. They're scared to death that they are going to lose their power in the future. And they are. But if you want to get ready for the future, if you want to be treated well in the future, treat others well in the present. What we do in the present constructs the future. What we have done in the past, we can learn from that. And we'd better learn from that. Those who forget the mistakes of the past are doomed to repeat them. And when you read this book, you'll realize that that's exactly what we're doing. We're repeating the mistakes that we have made in the past because we aren't teaching about these mistakes in the present. We are not teaching history that is true. We aren't teaching social studies that is true. We aren't even teaching true geography, for God's sake.
When we hear, when I hear people say that they're not racist and things like that, and we talk about building racial harmony in this country, I don't think I'll see it in my lifetime. Can you predict in the near future or far future when we will ever have racial harmony in this country?
In 30 years, white people will have found out that they have no choice but to get along with those who are different from themselves. I'm not willing, I'd love to wait, but I can't. At my age, I'm not going to be here in 30 years. But we could change this situation if we chose to. During the Second World War, we called the Japanese, and you'll pardon me, but this is what we called them, slant-eyed little yellow We didn't say that about the Germans. After the war, we rebuilt Germany and Japan, and we get along beautifully with the Japanese. That was in 1945 that we finally won that war. How many years ago was that? Figure that out quickly.
I'm not a math person, but
You're not a math person, but you know it wasn't that far.
Right.
And it didn't take 50 years for us to have peace with the Japanese and the Germans, even though we dropped 2 atomic bombs on Japan. The Japanese hadn't killed 10 million people. Nowhere near that. We didn't drop any bombs on Germany, any atomic bombs on Germany. They were a different kind of people. We couldn't afford to do that. We killed how many Japanese people with 2 atomic bombs? And they forgave us. You want to talk about forgiveness? You want to talk about changing this thing? I cannot understand how Japanese people can stand the sight of any of us, and yet they do. I cannot understand why black people who have been subjected to the ugliness that they've been subjected to in this country can get up every morning and go to work among us and not be absolutely furious. And I don't understand why we allow white people to behave the way they do. I don't understand that. And my 3rd graders, after they'd gone through the exercise, couldn't understand it and wouldn't tolerate it. And when they went up to junior high and a junior high teacher used the N-word, one of my former students said, "If you're going to use that word, I'm going to go out in the hall until you stop using it, because we don't use that word in this school." That was a 7th grader who told his teacher off. When we have enough students who are willing to confront people who are making racist, sexist, ageist, homophobic statements, we're going to be better off. We have got to stop tolerating the intolerable. If it's intolerable for my black cousins, and every black person on this earth is one of my cousins, if it's intolerable for them, it's intolerable for me. I will not tolerate it. I will not tolerate it. That is not that. I am required not to tolerate that kind of treatment for the people who are related to me. And that's every person on the face of the earth. If your ignorance is such that you'll mistreat somebody because of your ignorance about the color of their skin, don't do it around me. Number one, I've been threatened with death lots of times. Now I say, go for it, fool. My husband died 4 years ago. Being with him would not be a bad thing for me. Death is not the worst thing that can happen to you. Living a worthless, useless life is much worse than dying.
Why I stopped being a racist, part 1. I've been asked probably well over 1,000 times in the comments and messages why I chose to confront my own racism and my prejudice ideology. So I thought I'd just have an honest conversation with you and break it down over a few parts and let you see into the mind of someone like me, the way I grew up, and the man I'm becoming. Now here's the crazy thing. I've only ever known one racist in my life for sure, and that's me, because I can't speak into the hearts and minds of another human being and what they think and feel. That's not fair, and that's prejudicial of me. So I'm the only one I've ever known, so I feel I can speak with authority about this. I'm not calling out other people who are. This is simply about my evolution and the things I confronted and some of the difficulties and some of the beautiful parts of this. This is not an easy thing for me to do. This is kind of laying my soul bare. So if you would, let me know if this is something you want me to continue in the comments, please, because it's going to take a lot for me to invest emotionally to be open about this. Now, why is it I grew up with so much prejudice and bias and discrimination in my life? Well, I grew up in a small town in Arkansas, and I am Arkansas proud. Let me just say that right off the top. But I grew up with people who taught me these things, and it was instilled in me. I mean, it was just reinforced over and over. And then for the most part, I lived in an echo chamber of other people who thought the same thing. So I didn't know it was possible to think any other way. I was raised Christian. I cannot explain to you why my faith in God, my morality, and my racism took so long to cross paths. I can't explain it, but it probably took about 40 years to figure that out. There's a whole series of events in my life, I guess, ultimately that led up to this. And prison was probably one of the biggest catalysts, because when you're on 23-1 lockdown with someone of a different color from you in the same cell, you shut your mouth and you listen. You ask questions. And I had so many different cellmates from different countries, from different races and heritages. And it just really opened my mind. And sitting in prison, I had a lot of time to think. And I had some old timers tell me I need to do my time. Don't let my time do me. And those are good words of advice. But I started digging deep into myself and my flaws, and because I was probably the biggest asshole I knew at that time, and I wasn't proud of that at all. And I knew I needed to change if I wanted to live a productive and healthy life and just be somebody likable. I just couldn't see the world for the way it really was. And that breaks my heart that it took me so long to see it. But the beauty that is born from this change in me, or this growth, is just crazy. God is amazing. So if you want me to continue this, let me know and I'll do a part 2.
Black Americans who changed the world and were punished for it. Number 1, Muhammad Ali. The greatest boxer alive refused the Vietnam draft in 1967 on principle, and they stripped his title, banned him from boxing for 3 years, and threatened him with 5 years in prison. The Supreme Court eventually ruled in his favor. They had already taken his prime years. Number 2, Paul Robeson. An all-American athlete, Columbia Law graduate, and celebrated performer who spoke out against racism and had his passport revoked in 1950, making it illegal for him to work internationally. They did not jail him, they just erased him. Number 3, Marcus Garvey. He built the largest black mass movement in American history, with over 2 million members and his own shipping line, newspaper, and organization. J. Edgar Hoover personally assigned agents to destroy him. He was convicted on evidence legal scholars still call fundamentally flawed and deported in 1927. Number 4, Fannie Lou Hamer. She tried to register to vote in Mississippi and was beaten by police so severely she suffered permanent kidney damage. She testified about it on live national television. President Johnson called an emergency press conference to pull the cameras away from her. It did not work. Before I say the last one, make sure to hit that follow button to support the channel. Number 5, Fred Hampton. He was 21 years old, running free breakfast programs for children when the FBI labeled him America's greatest internal threat. Chicago police raided his apartment at 4 a.m., drugged him beforehand according to autopsy results, and shot him twice in the head while he slept. No officer was ever charged.
I'm just gonna say it, right? If more people, more white people would stand up against racism, we could probably get it to damn near end, y'all. I'll stand up for it. I know racism isn't right, but I need more white people to jump on this train to help me take a stand against racism. There are white people out here, y'all, that's got people thinking that we are all racist, when that is not what's going on. So we have got to put a message out to take a stand against racism. Like, I will start it off. I don't care. I will stand alone in it.